Welcome to Parenting Vanessa Clone's podcast. All right, it's a little bit about me. I'm a family interventionist. I have started the school, a nonprofit that is a K through 8, which specializes in social emotional learning, which is KFS school, along with the 3R method that works on self-regulation and body awareness, along with the social emotional learning that builds on the relationships of the child and whoever they're working with, parent or teacher. And I just have a lot to offer when it comes to interventions with kids of all ages. And it's really important for me that people have more tools in the toolkit when it comes to parenting. Welcome to Parenting with Vanessa Cologne. Last week we were talking about yoga, and I have somebody who's very special. I keep opening with that, but I don't know a lot of special people, but Shana is definitely one of them, because the reason why Yes Yoga first came about is because what did you do? Asked me to develop this program for kids with autism. Shana, tell us who you are and your background.
Hey, Vanessa, it's so great to be here with you, and that our friendship has endured through all these years. I don't even know, what year did you take my training? A lot of years ago.
I want to say 10, maybe.
Is that it? Okay, so
I don't, yeah. I did, maybe, no, I think it was 13, because someone actually just posted on my page on something else that I did this training with them. And I'm all, wait, then you were right after. Because I thought that, when I did my 200 hour that, I can work with kids with that. And I realized you can't.
Yeah. So, right. So that's how we met. I teach children, but I teach people how to teach children, yoga teacher training for children with my mini yogis course. And obviously that's how I met you. And that you really took the information that really mini yogis is not about special needs. It's very inclusive. It's about all children of all needs. And you just took that information and ran with it and created something incredibly special. And I'm proud to know you and to be a part of the Yes family. I don't even know how you pronounce it. I know it's YEAS.
No, you said it right. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right. But I remember you saying, can you do this? I'm all, yeah, I'll figure it out. And then you hosted my first training.
That's right. And I think your second or third one too. Yeah. And everybody was thrilled with the training. I have to say that even though I am absolutely an expert in the children's yoga field, I did not know anything about working with children on the spectrum until I took your training, which gave me the confidence to start working with a population that prior to meeting you and training with you was not a comfortable population for me, because I didn't get them and I didn't know how to connect with them. But since your training, I've been able to share this gift with children across the spectrum. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it. So you work with a lot of kids with anxiety, ADHD and stuff like that. So you're based in LA. So yep. Just make sure everyone knows that, because if you're looking for somebody, because this does go on my podcast too. So explain a little bit more about your yoga approach and how you're helping these kids who have anxiety and everything else that's going on.
Yeah. So, I've been working with children with high anxiety I started mini yogis 22 years ago in 2002. Back then, honestly, kids did not have the levels of anxiety that we're experiencing now, and particularly since the pandemic, it's skyrocketed. So when I work with kids with anxiety, it's a large combination, honestly, of asana, meaning the postures and the physical practice, because it gives the mind a chance to separate from their daily lives and focus on something different. But a big part of every single class that I do is meditation, breathing, and also just giving literally tools for functioning in day-to-day life when anxiety arises.
Right. And then you've helped a lot of kids and families, right?
I think that's pretty fair to say. It's funny, when I started mini yogis, really, it was a way for me to hang out with children, because I love children so much. and do yoga with them because I love yoga so much. But I have to say that in at least the last decade, my practice has shifted so dramatically from working with mostly typically developing children to working primarily with children who are suffering from high levels of anxiety. Now, of course, I work with typical children as well. I love every child with every ounce of my being. But when you work with children with particular needs, the results are so tangible and it's just so rewarding.
Right. Well, we're both Jewish. So that's
Yes.
another common thing that we both have. And I know that you've been doing a lot of stuff. I also want to talk about your handstands that you've been teaching, by the
Okay.
way.
My secret double life. Yeah.
Yeah, your secret double life. And the other thing is, I know that and also with me too, we know a lot of people. And then, since we've been, since October 7th, right? That how has things shifted in just your business? Because I know we've talked about this before and you're like, you know what? My money, I donate it to Israel. If you don't want to be part of it or not, like, have you seen things like shift for you or losing people in your life?
Sure. I mean, first of all, let me just say that this is not a cause du jour for me. I've been a very vocal pro-Israel activist even before social media, but with the advent of social media, every time there's been a war or a conflict, I lose thousands of followers. Now, this is not a vanity thing for me. My social media is my business. This is where my business comes from Instagram and from YouTube. So yes, I lose it, and to an extent from Facebook. I lose a massive amount of followers. I get death threats every day, sometimes from previous quote unquote friends, sometimes from strangers if you just use hashtag Israel. It's been really, really hard. I have to say, I've lost students, I've lost accounts, many. My business came to a screeching halt after October, a screeching halt to October after October 7th, excuse me. And it's been devastating, but as far as I'm concerned, it's principles over paychecks. And I need to speak up for what I believe in because there is no alternative. If people don't speak up for what they believe is morally just, we wind up in a very, very dangerous society, which we're submerged in right now. Yeah. Yeah. Sadly, we are.
So,
And the funny thing is, though I've been extraordinarily vocal on social media, it's always just positive posts. And it's always either about, how to restore peace or that we need to save the hostages or that, quite frankly, this is a just war because, and I always say to people, I am open 100% to respectful discussion. If you have a question, ask me. Let's talk about it. And yet the response is a family-friendly show, so I can't even tell you, but the response that comes back is so violent and so rabidly anti-Semitic and intimidating and angry. And it's very disheartening in a industry that is supposed to be characterized by kindness.
yeah, the yoga community for sure. One of the things that since October 7th, one of the things that has been hard for me coming from having, like there was the Me Too movement, right? And then there's a part of me during that Me Too movement going, wow, like women are starting to be believed, right? Like other things are starting to come up. And so I had this whole thing that, maybe because of my history, which I don't know if we've talked about my history, that there's been abuse in my background. And so what's been triggering me the most is it's okay, like what happened on October 7th is okay because of blah, 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 blah. Or there's the women women who are, struggling and that have a sexual abuse background, which I do. And so it's been really hard for me. And I feel like it's just a re-trigger in a way of like, okay, I've dealt with all this and now it's like coming right back up again. And then it's like the people that are saying it and then the people that are doing it. And I'm like, do we not understand like what we're doing and saying, how hurtful it is?
Sure. It's me too, unless you're a Jew.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't even know if the word is sad or scary, or maybe both, is the fact that we live in a particular time that is extraordinarily vocal about tolerance, about fighting hatred, about, equal rights, about, all of the things, right? And
Right.
even in this climate of, I'll call it extreme tolerance, if that's not, sort of a contradiction, that anti-Semitism, the blatant and vocal hatred of Jews could flourish in an environment that rejects, quote unquote, all forms of hatred is a bitter irony at best, and a very dangerous omen at worst, because every civilization in history that has submerged itself in anti-Semitism has wound up destroying itself. And what people don't seem to understand is that anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. It's a societal problem, because any society that defines itself by hatred is a society that is about to consume itself.
100%. Well said. And you were just in Israel too, right? So you've gone since the war and everything else. And how was it there?
So I've been back twice, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went in March or April to volunteer for a week, and then I went back in May for a mission to the South. Two very, very different experiences. What I can tell you beyond the actual 2-hour video I posted on YouTube about my experiences, is that the feeling in Israel right now is a very unique one. The whole entire national soul was definitely decimated on October 7th, but Israel is also the most resilient nation on earth, because sadly enough, they're used to rising from the ashes. As are, the Jews of the diaspora, it's what we've done from generation to generation, right? Lador vador. This is the oldest hatred. It does not change. I think, oddly enough, in Israel, even though the world has turned so vocally against them, and by the way, the first time in history that the world has turned against the victims of an atrocity rather than the perpetrators.
Right? I don't understand. I don't like
it hurts the head.
You know what? I really I just don't get it. You know what I mean? You're talking about, I mean, major assaults and I'm like, you can't even say them you can't say, but it's just the extent. And then everyone's like, or then you're seeing signs of it's going to happen again. And then it's like, well, you're defending yourself. And it's like this whole thing of well, if they say it's going to happen again, do you just let someone come into your house and do what they want?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is media.
Right.
Part of it is social media, and a large part of it also is the government and their equivocal messaging that basically has turned our nation against Israel, who happens to be America's single most strategic and loyal ally on earth. But in the interest of political I don't know, salvation, the Biden administration has really undermined Israel vocally, and this war of words has become bigger than the war of weapons, unfortunately. And people who honestly have no real information about the facts or about the history are suddenly experts.
Well, talk about what just happened to you recently when you were going to a protest, not a protest. Yeah, it was a demonstration of the.
At UCLA.
Yeah.
So
I love the Jews. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's like I was just talking to somebody about today. It's like you just don't know whether to laugh or cry anymore. So I went to the rally, the pro-Israel rally at UCLA, which was, I guess, the very end of April, beginning of May now. And keep in mind that every pro-Israel rally is characterized by calls for peace and waving of Israeli and American flags, and in really stark contrast to the demonstrations, I don't know what else to call them, that are not pro-Palestinian. They're anti-Israel. There's a difference. The pro-Israel rallies are not anti-Palestinian. We never talk about hurting anybody. We never talk about killing anybody. We never talk about destroying anybody. We rally for peace. And if people can't understand that justified wars are required to establish or restore peace, not just now, but throughout all of history, they're missing a big piece of the equation. So anyway, after this rally, we were told, don't interact with the protesters who were surrounding us. I mean, literally surrounding us everywhere we went. So we're walking out, and there's this big, huge blob of protesters, are holding their elbows like, don't come past, blockading. Right. And I'm like, okay, Shana, don't confront, just walk by. And then there was a guy who literally yelled out, "We love the Jews." Okay, now this is in the anti-Israel protesters, and his next sentence, like if this were in The Simpsons, it would be too ridiculous, or South Park. The next sentence was, "There is only one solution, Intifada revolution." And so I'm like, okay, this one's too good to walk past. So I went right up to him with my camera and I said, how can you say that you love the Jews and call for Intifada in the very next sentence? Do you even know what Intifada is? Which is globalizing the Intifada, if anybody doesn't know, means kill Jews wherever you can find them. And don't claim ignorance, because if you're standing with a group of people who are calling for Intifada, you need to know who you're standing with. You are standing with a death cult that wants to see the annihilation and murder of every Jew on earth. Regardless. So I said, do you know what Intifada is? At which point I got accosted by all these like other protesters who started covering up my phone and putting up flags and like, we're not talking to you. Don't answer her. And he's like, I love the Jews. And I'm like, and Intifada. And it was just so confusing. Not to me as much as clearly it was to him. He had clearly no idea what he was saying.
Right.
And I think that's this like really one of the great tragedies is that this brainwashing that's going on against the Jews, it's like people don't even realize how much they've been victims of terrorist propaganda. And by the way, that I hate to like throw around the analogies, but that is how Nazi Germany happened. And Nazi Germany is a nice way of saying Nazi Europe. The whole continent turned against the Jews without even realizing, right, quote unquote, good people took on this ideology of pure and vile hatred because they were brainwashed by propaganda. But you know what? they didn't have the lens of history to fall back on, and we do. So there is no excuse for what is going on our streets and campuses today.
Right. I mean, you saw that at UCLA, you'd have to wear, just even to get to the library, you'd have to know somebody and that believed in what they believe in. And then you actually have like a wristband, right? It's like if you and if you were Jewish, you couldn't go in.
The fact that
like there's a wristband, be like, okay, I don't know. To me, it was like, is this like really happening?
Yeah, the fact that the administration of all these universities have handed over the keys to kids who are pledging their allegiance to known terrorist entities,
right,
is extraordinarily disconcerting. These, you and I work with the next generation, and we do it because we know that we have the opportunity to instill positive values and skills in these children's lives so they could have better, more productive lives. Now, we both know that the young generation is the next generation of leaders. And these kids, you can't just write off as, they're too young to know what they're talking about.
I disagree. Even at age 3, 4, or 5, I'm like, it's a choice to be happy and it's a choice to make the right choice or not. And like, where do you stand? And people think I'm crazy when parents say that. And I go, it's a choice to be happy. You can either sit here and feel sorry for yourself, and I'll say that to my kids, or you can move on. Let me know when you're done feeling sorry for yourself, and then we'll have some fun. But like, you have to you get stuck in your head in the script and over again. And again, that going back to the anxiety, but also becoming like a good person. And it's like when you're, I went to the Nova Festival in New York, right? And then I just saw these protests out front of them, and all the stuff that they were saying. And those were victims from October 7th in there and their family. And I'm like, what? where are we? And what time is this in this world that it's okay to chant, kill whatever or do whatever. And especially when there were already victims from there.
Right.
I mean, I met some of them. And so the fact that there's this, for people to think it's okay, I just don't get. So that moral compass is gone somewhere.
Sure. It's the height of hypocrisy to hate in the name of social justice. The thing is that if people disagree with the way that Israel is handling the war, that is their choice. But know the facts, because there has unequivocally never been a more humane military in the history of warfare than the IDF. So even not appreciating the extraordinary lengths that Israel goes to protect civilians. I can't call them innocent. Over 90% of them support Hamas to this day. But let's just say civilians. Nobody goes to those lanes. But even if you disagree with Israel's handling of the war, the turning of this hatred and violence towards a whole entire group of people, all Jews, it's psychotic, it's sociopathic. And the turning against victims is so hypocritical in the name of social justice that there's no words for it. I mean, think about what happened with George Floyd. We're talking about one man who was killed. It wasn't murder, it was manslaughter. The intention wasn't to kill him. I'm not saying this to discount what happened. It was horrific, but a policeman engaged in excessive behaviors that killed one man. And what happened? The entire world rallied immediately to change the world for the better. And it did. the whole world became more tolerant and the whole world became more accepting and the whole world wanted to understand the plight of, people of color and that's one person. Could you imagine if after the police killed George Floyd, right? A hardened criminal, by the way. He wasn't exactly like this angel, martyr, whatever. But if the whole world said, you know what? Kill all the blacks. If that was their response and the whole world erupted and was like, yes, we need to kill all the blacks. I mean, that would have been, first of all, there's no way it would have happened. Like, there's no way it would have happened, but people don't even understand that is the exact correlation that is happening now. On October 7th and 8th, people across the world were already calling for Intifada before Israel even responded, before the blood was dry. While Hamas was still occupying Israel and massacring and burning and dismembering Jews and their entire families, as they were doing it, people around the world were already rallying, saying, yes, kill the Jews. It is mind-boggling and the epitome of depravity.
No, it is always a pleasure talking to you, Shana.
I'm sorry that this isn't the best and most uplifting of conversations, but Vanessa, I hope we could talk again at a time where the conversation gets to focus on the gifts of yoga.
Well, I think this needs to be talked about. I think it needs to be heard because as there's we're not a lot of people for a 0.02%. And I think people understanding what is happening for all of us, right? Me as with my own background, and stuff coming up for me this last year. And then I have lost some friends and, business. Well, I don't know if I've lost business because I have a school. So it's like the same people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a hard time all around. And sometimes I just get really angry and I want to say something. And then it's like, I'm on social media and I work with parents and families, but this is a good opportunity to have an open dialogue and talk about what's going on. And, you could choose to listen or not.
Sure.
But I would love to have you back on. We can do a couple other things. And I have taken your headstand. How can people find you, by the way? Because you do a ton of stuff. And I think that your work is very, you're very systematic in how you're teaching yoga and just you're great with what you're doing. So how can they find you?
Thank you. So for my work with children, you could find me at miniyogis.com, miniyogis.com. And for the work that I do with adults, my secret double life as a ninja handstander, you can reach me at yogathletica.com. I'll spell that out too because it's a little bit weird. YOGATHLETICA.com. Just one A in the middle.
Right. Well, it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Parenting with Vanessa Colon. And if you have any questions about your child or want to hear other tips, please go to Vanessa's website, vanessacolon.com at VANESSAKAHLON.com or email colonfamilyservices@gmail.com.